Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company. I'm Pete Gruber, and this is the Gruber Morning Show. We have our TikTok friends, Instagram friends, Facebook, and YouTube Shorts joining us this morning. Any questions that you would like to ask throughout the session or the podcast, feel free to do so. Let us know where you're from. People like seeing what part of the world or who's joining our podcast from what part of the world. For those of you on YouTube, I have a silent co-host with me today. His name is Bob, and he will be joining us for the next few podcasts. The picture behind us, for those of you that are seeing something more than green screen, and by the way, we are working on getting green screen operational on the other platforms. For now, some of you may just be seeing a green screen. The picture that you see behind me is one taken in Sedona. I've lived in the state of Arizona for over 40 years, and everybody raves about the Grand Canyon as being the spectacular place to visit in the state of Arizona. Really, Sedona, I think, ranks up there at the top of the list. It is a beautiful red rock country and absolutely gorgeous. Just gorgeous. So anyway, that's the picture behind me. And again, any questions you may have, feel free to ask them. We have our first question actually from YouTube, Steve Rose. When can I bring my batteries to you? I'm assuming we're talking about Model S batteries at this point. We are still backlogged. What we're accepting right now is Tesla Roadster projects, and there seem to be plenty of those. Picked up another one last night that is a brick roadster, which means that the battery is dead. And in order to keep the car alive, we have to start recovery within the first few months after it getting bricked. So those are the high priority at this point. Another YouTube question from Milan Alempejevich. What oil goes in the large drive unit in a Model S? And is it Dextron 6? Thank you. He's from Serbia. I don't know that, and I'm not going to venture a guess here, but our technical people in the service center are definitely up to speed on that. We'll save that question, and if you send us your email, Milan, we will get back to you with what kind of fluid goes into that drivetrain. Looks like we have another YouTube question from Drew Haggerty. He has a 2013 Model S with 133,000 miles that he bought 2 months ago. It had 122,000 when he bought it, so it looks like he put some miles on it. The drive motor is whining and slightly roaring when slowing down. Can my motor be rebuilt or fixed? He's in Wilmington, North Carolina. What you're describing sounds to me like the milling noise that some of the Tesla Model S drivetrains have. It can be fixed. The fix is a replacement. And my wife, for example, drove hers with the milling noise for 2 years. It doesn't get any worse. It just sounds like a pod racer when you're going down the street. And sometimes people are impressed, sometimes they're annoyed. But if it's not real loud, it may be cheaper to just simply let the milling noise exist. All right, getting into our topics. General Motors is shutting down 5 plants, the biggest being Oshawa, Ontario. Oshawa, Ontario, the GM plant was once one of the biggest auto assembly plants in the world. And it had been in operation for 100 years. Now, these are always sad events because it affects a lot of people's lives. There are people that have been working there, one of them on YouTube, for 37 years. And, these kinds of closures affect people's lives. So it's not a pleasant experience when these large companies begin to wind down operations. As the Ontario Federation of Labor contact, Chris Buckley, pointed out, This closure will affect thousands of others across the region because for every job at an assembly plant like this, an additional 9 jobs are created in the community. Employment at the factory has grown and shrunk and changed with the times. During the peak, there were 23,000 people working at this Ontario plant in the 1980s. Today, they employ about 4,000, and they will be shuttering the plant before too long. Now, one might ask, what is the impact on the auto industry with these kinds of closures? Well, GM is following the lead of Ford Motor Company in dumping their car lines in favor of their profitable products, which are pickups and SUVs here in the U.S. The opinion, though, is that just like in the 70s when these same companies abandoned the small car market and gave it to the Japanese, they're going to have the same result. They will have a larger and larger portion of a smaller and smaller market until it's all gone. Now, hopefully they'll be able to pivot and move into electric vehicles, which is where the future is clearly heading at this point. Now, one interesting thing that I found by doing some research with this is the number of hours required to assemble various types of cars. A typical gasoline car, ICE car, internal combustion engine car, takes 6.2 hours to assemble. A hybrid car is 9.2 hours, and a full EV car is only 3.7 hours. So obviously this means that less people are going to be required to build cars in the future. And if Elon has his way with humanoid robots staffing these plants, there may be even fewer humans involved in the production of automobiles. If you have any opinions on this, please share them with us. We'd like to hear from our audience. So someone else pointed out, this is reminiscent of the early 1910s and 1920s, when society needed less people to take care of horse and carriages as they moved transportation to motor vehicles. Well, the same type of transition appears to be happening today. And someone else pointed out, this is kind of like Kodak. If you remember the big film conglomerate in Rochester, New York, there's very little left of that company. And again, it affected tens of thousands, even actually hundreds of thousands of jobs and careers. And I know it well because I grew up in Rochester, and many of the people there had what they thought were lifetime careers with Kodak, only to find that in the twilight of their years, that was not the case, and it was no longer a cradle-to-grave job, which they had hoped it would be. All right, we have a couple of questions. From TikTok, Kylian, can I become a service provider or a repair station? Well, anyone can do what we did with Gruber Motor Company, but it is a difficult road at this point in time because the amount of support is very limited. And you fundamentally have to have the ability to reverse engineer, create your own schematics, create your own test procedures, create your own diagnostic software, and not every repair shop has the resources to do something like this. TikTok, AZ Riders, how do I feel about people on the social media saying Teslas are horrible cars because of battery issues? Well, there are always going to be detractors for any kind of new technology. And we tend to fear new things, and I think that that's what plays into this. However, on the flip side, there is a valid argument that in an electric vehicle, you don't have a lot of parts, expensive parts, that comprise the vehicle. In an electric vehicle, you happen to have a couple of things that are very expensive, and one of them is the main drive battery. We understand that Tesla is coming down in price now. They were $22,000 for a new replacement battery, and we talked to a customer yesterday that said that he thought that they told him they have a new battery for $15,000, which of course is still much more than an internal combustion engine part, but it looks like pricing is headed in the right direction. I think for the time being, if you need a battery for an EV, it's going to be a painful procedure. But the good news is, as the technology continues to improve and evolve, the cost of batteries will continue to come down. We have a YouTube question from MyMelt. Have you had any experience with battery coolant leaks and pump problems with the Model S? Yes, lots. The design of the drivetrain is such that under heavy use, there is a seal which has been corrected by Tesla, but some of the old cars still have the problem. And once that seal is compromised, you actually get coolant, glycol, getting into the drive motor, and worse yet, into the inverter. And since the coolant is somewhat conductive, it really raises a lot of hell once it gets in there with the car, and replacement is the only option. We have another bit of news here. It looks like Elon has changed his mind about the acquisition of Twitter. I was going to say TikTok. Heaven forbid. Last thing we need is Elon focused on yet another social media platform acquisition. We need him focused on continuing to build Tesla, SpaceX, and this cool stuff that he's doing with robots. But anyway, it looks like he changed his mind, and he's now willing to buy the company for $54.20 per share, which was the original offer price, until Elon realized that the membership in Twitter was not what it was reported to be. There were a lot of spam bots that were populating. I think the count was like 15,000 or 15%. We'll look that up later here. So anyway, trading on Twitter stock, of course, went through the roof, soared 22% late Tuesday to $52 a share. Tesla, on the other hand, Tesla stock tended to nosedive on a couple of bits of news. One was that the delivery expectations weren't living up to expectations, but the worst one was that Elon was again now buying Twitter, and the concern is that he's going to be selling a bunch of Tesla stock in order to make that happen. Well, we don't know how Elon, the world's richest man, is going to buy Twitter, but hopefully it's not by dumping a bunch of Tesla shares. The goal here, of course, was to avoid the court proceedings, which were going to start this month. And as someone pointed out at the University of Columbia, he said it's not surprising that Elon had a turnaround, especially ahead of scheduled depositions, which are not going to be pleasant. And I think anybody in business or is as busy as someone like Elon doesn't have time to sit in court and do the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, where they're sitting there entertaining legions of people with personal trivia. We're way too busy for that sort of thing. So that may be one of the things that this professor feels was a catalyst for Elon changing his mind. The original case didn't look strong anyway, based on the merits of what looked to be buyer's remorse. And if they were going to lose this trial, it would have cost Elon more than the $44 million or so that he was paying for Twitter. All right, let's see what else we have here. A couple of questions, okay?
Yeah, real quick. Just on that related topic, do you think that Elon selling a bunch of Tesla stock, how do you think that would actually affect Tesla, aside from the stock price going down? Would that actually be a serious issue for Tesla if you were to sell some stock to make this purchase?
Well, we don't know that he hasn't already been selling stock, although SEC requires public disclosure of any owners or principals within publicly traded corporations to reveal what sort of stock transactions are taking place. I don't think it will affect anything, but again, the market does not react to facts, it reacts to emotion. And of course, the fear that he's going to dump a bunch of stock is beginning to affect Tesla stock. Now, again, my advice is, and I'm not a financial investment expert here, but it seems to me that a company as strong as Tesla, and we'll talk a bit more about some of the advances that they've made just recently, this is buying time. Smart money buys dips. And when you see a strong company like this that has two bits of bad news in this case, that's the time to accumulate all that you can.
Okay, and then on that topic related to that, so uh, personally, I have some Canoo and I have some Lucid, and those are way down. Now, those aren't as strong of companies as Tesla. What do you think about those companies? When will we see any kind of success with those guys? And is this also a good time to buy the dip on those? Just in your opinion, obviously not financial
Sure.
advice.
You know, we've said this before. Take Lucid, for example. I think it's trading down around $14, $15 right now, which I think is the low for the year. There's nothing wrong with the company structure, the funding, the backing. I would be concerned about the companies that have come and gone, the ones that didn't have strong financial backing, that were in a precarious position should they have a downturn or they weren't able to begin creating product quickly enough to satisfy investors or venture capitalists. Again, Lucid is funded by the Saudis. They realize that the oil gig is up. They realize that this is their second act, and they're not going to let Lucid die. And when you take a look at the Lucid infrastructure, a lot of Tesla talent is working within Lucid. There's a strong basis for continuing and, or at least becoming successful with their product. And just like all the EV manufacturers, they went through hiccups. You know, GM with their battery recall, Tesla with all of their warranty issues. They will get it right, and they have the type of backing that is required. Now, Canoo, I think Richard here is a bit more, has a bit more expertise on that company. What I would do if you're interested is take a look at the financial backing, take a look at the financial structure, and then make a decision whether the company will survive this round of development that they're going through before they actually begin to mass produce vehicles. All right, question from Instagram from, can't read that name, Fast Lane Motors, is it? Mopars. Oh, Fast Lane Mopars, okay. I'm a Mopar guy too, by the way. I'll discuss that sometime in a podcast here. How hard is it to convert a traditional gas vehicle to electric using a Tesla drivetrain? Don't do it. It's kind of like Joe Biden said when asked about the nuclear option for Putin. Don't. I mean, unless you have a lot of money to burn and you've got a strong emotional attachment to that, you know, 1969 Plymouth Roadrunner or 68 Dodge Charger, and you want to electrify it, I assure you that it's going to cost an arm and a leg, lots of fabrication, and lots of design challenges. There will someday be companies that will sell plug-and-play drivetrain conversions, just like they did in the ICE world, where you could buy a crate engine, a Hemi crate engine, for example, and plug that into your Mopar. For now, though, it is going to be a labor of love, and it's going to cost you a whole lot more than you anticipated. But you're going to end up with a really cool car. I've got a 1971 Cuda, by the way, that's got a blown engine. And someday I'm going to get around to electrifying that car, but just not this year.
And Pete, if people want to see how much work is involved kind of in the opposite direction, they can go check out Rich Rebuilds, who turned his Tesla into a V8.
Good point. Yeah, Rich Rebuilds actually went the opposite direction. We had a customer in Rhode Island last year that bought a Tesla Roadster. And he asked us if we wanted to buy the battery and the power electronics module because he wanted to convert that car back to a Lotus Elise. We just basically said, we'll buy it, knock yourself out, but we're certainly not going to be able to help you restore a internal combustion engine drivetrain in that car. We have no expertise there. All right. Can we pop up a picture of the T0? What we're going to show you here is an interesting car that only 3 were built in 1997. And for all intents and purposes, we believe that this was the car that started the electric vehicle revolution. It was a car that was able to do 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. And it had an 80-mile range. It was built by AC Propulsion Systems in San Dimas, California. part of a federal grant that they received, and they only had enough money to build 3 of them, but the word got out. They took this thing to Laguna Seca. They ran it on the racetrack, and before you know it, people began to realize that they were beating Lamborghinis and Ferraris at Laguna Seca. It drew the attention of Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, who are the original founders of Tesla, and they went to AC Propulsion and asked them if they were going to build this car, and they said, nope, we're an engineering company. If you guys want to do it, we'll help you. So that's what started Tesla. The reason I bring that up is, if you notice the yellow gizmo sitting behind the car, that is a charging method. There was a Honda generator, a Yamaha, one of those two with a DC generator. And when you ran out of juice after 80 miles of driving, there were no charging stations in 1997. So in order to continue to drive, you would fire up this DC generator behind the car with a trailer hitch connected to a trailer hitch, and you would be able to then continue your drive. Of course, every bit of carbon-reducing initiative that you were involved in while driving the T0 got immediately wiped out with a 2-stroke engine. So the reason that I wanted to pop this up for you guys is Tesla's supercharger network in Europe has grown significantly over the last few months. There are now over 10,000 supercharger stalls at nearly 900 stations in 30 countries across Europe. And most of that has been done within the last 9 months. They go on to list the countries: France, Spain, Belgium, Holland, and Germany, and of course others. Nearly one-fifth of the supercharger stalls in Europe have been added since the first 9 months of 2022 alone. Most of the supercharger locations are in Germany, with more than 1,900 stalls over 144 locations. France is not far behind, in second place with 1,500 stalls, while the world leader in electric vehicles now is Norway. It has the 3rd largest supercharger network in Europe with more than 1,400 stalls. So congratulations, Europe, for adopting the electric vehicles at what appears to be the same excitement that we have here in the United States for EVs. They also mentioned that in the UK and Ireland, they're home to 1,000 supercharger stalls at more than 100 locations. So the other part about that, which I found fascinating is, and it'll come to the United States eventually, is Europe is also home to the automaker Tesla's non-Tesla supercharger pilot program, where select stations now are available to owners of all EVs. There are 14 different countries in Europe participating in this program, providing more than 320 superchargers with 4,600 stalls to all EVs. What this means basically is a huge revenue-generating opportunity for Tesla. We all knew that eventually they would move from free supercharging. We knew that wasn't sustainable because you have a huge cost for lease space at malls and wherever they were located, plus the cost of electricity and the cost of maintenance. Eventually, Tesla began charging for supercharging for their vehicles in the United States, and now they are opening that up to other vehicles, so that which generates, of course, even more revenue from this from their supercharging locations. Looks like we have a couple of questions. There's a TikTok questions from Chicago Electrician. Greetings from Chicago. TikTok question from Kylian. As the EV cars evolve and the demand for mechanics will increase, will the repair info become more available? It will have to. Some of the manufacturers, like Tesla, for example, do not support yet or encourage independent maintenance. They certainly don't squash it like some of the other businesses or the other markets that we're in, but they're not making enormous amounts of data available because they're able to continue to grow their own service delivery network. There are other EV producers that aren't going to be quite as lucky as Tesla in that they had a measured growth and they were able to create service delivery along with production. The ones that are going to be moving into rapid production will eventually have to outsource because their service delivery just won't keep up. And at that point in time, they're going to look for companies that have some skills in the EV space. They will then, of course, train these people or these companies that they're outsourcing to and provide the tools necessary to make them successful. So that day is coming. It's just not here today yet. We have a question from TikTok. I charge my 3 from 120 volts only throughout the day as I come and go. Is this bad? Actually, it's good. The slower the charge, the better. When you move to an extremely rapid charge method like superchargers, where you're injecting direct DC voltage into the battery at high rates of current, it takes a toll on the batteries eventually. What we recommend with Tesla Roadsters, and this is probably the best benchmark for us to gather any sort of data about charging. Some of these packs are 14 years old. We repair and recover packs, and we see a definite trend in the packs that have been charged, gone through rapid, high current charge versus the ones that have been kept on slow charge. And the slow charge batteries do tend to last longer. Question from Jimmy on TikTok. What's poppin', Vin Diesel? Hope you're having a great day. Thank you, Jimmy. We have another TikTok question. How much to fix a Model S rear drive unit? Well, replacement is around $4,000 to $6,000, and that's for a used rear or a used drivetrain. It depends on what needs to be repaired. For example, if it's the mounting cradle and the motor mounts, which are aluminum, by the way, and with spirited driving tend to crack and break, that repair is around $1,000 to $1,500. We have to pull the drivetrain. We then weld new mounts onto the existing drive rail, and we actually improve the design by welding gussets on the motor mounts. TikTok from Javanoo. Why don't you work on Model 3s? Well, because they're not out of warranty yet. Somebody that owns a Model 3 gets free repairs at the Tesla service centers. We can't offer that. We're not getting reimbursed by Tesla for doing work on Model 3s yet. We have a TikTok question from Automat. What is your opinion on Lucid compared to Tesla? And what's Toyota like in EV terms of durability? Well, a couple of good questions, actually. Lucid and Tesla. The feedback that we get is that the Lucid is a bit more luxurious on the interior than the Tesla products. From a reliability standpoint, it's too early to tell. Software problems, Lucid has some of those, just like Tesla did in the early days. But I would say overall, they're pretty comparable because the team that developed the Lucid product used a lot of the design cues and technology from Tesla, without, of course, compromising or violating any NDAs. The other question is, what's Toyota like in EV terms of durability? I'm going to go way out on a limb here and venture and say that the mature auto manufacturers, the ones that have been building cars for decades, are probably going to have less quality issues than the new EV manufacturers who haven't had decades to perfect their quality control processes. So I would expect nothing less of Toyota. I would expect their product and reliability and durability to be as good or better as the existing EV manufacturers that are still developing and evolving their QC processes and their production processes. TikTok question from Kyle Aloon. Thank you for answering my question. Kyle is good. Aloon is my second name. Okay, thank you. All right, here's another bit of news. It turns out that the Tesla Model Y is the, let me see if I can find this here. It's the top selling vehicle in Europe at this point in time. Switzerland, there we go. While Model 3 came in third. Switzerland is definitely embracing EVs, everything EV. And if you've been to Switzerland, the country is absolutely gorgeous. Their focus and the attention they pay to maintaining a pristine environment is almost like no country in the world. It's the kind of place like Germany where you can drive down the street and you're not going to see fast food trash laying on the sides of the road, because the people there just seem to have more respect for their environment. But I am not surprised that they are embracing this EV revolution, because it definitely is going to keep their environment as pristine as possible. Now, they were competing. Tesla was competing with some other models in Switzerland, and let me read you the lineup. Number 1 was a Model Y with 3,300 cars sold since the first of the year. Number 2 was Skoda Octavia. I'm sorry, I've never heard of the car, but congratulations for making number 2 at 3,200 sold. Guess who was number 3? Model 3 with 3,000, just over 3,000 sold. And then the Audi Q3 came in at 2,800, and the Volkswagen came in at 2,730. Now remember, Audi and Volkswagen are the standards in Europe, especially Switzerland and Germany. So having an American manufacturer, EV manufacturer, beat those two is pretty significant and commendable. Question from Jason, actually a statement from TikTok. He's watching from Canada. Welcome, Canada. TikTok, Jose Mdez, would you mind repeating your answer? How much is it to fix a Model S drive unit, 2013? It depends on the type of repair. If it's a drive unit replacement, you're in the neighborhood of $4,000 to $6,000. If it's a drive cradle busted motor mount type problem, or some other problem that doesn't require a drive unit replacement, could be anywhere from $500 to $1,500. And of course, every one of these repairs may have unique elements, and it could even be less or be more than that. So those of you that watched the Tesla AI Day, you may have been confused like I was when some of the really technical stuff began swinging by us. And there's a picture that we can pop up here. It's the picture of the AI rendition of the Cybertruck on Mars. And it was part of a demonstration that Tesla did to show what their new Dojo supercomputer is capable of doing. The thing that's significant to me about this is, in the 1970s, there was a company that evolved out of a number of companies called Cray Research. It was a supercomputer that was developed by Seymour Craig, who began his career with Univac. Sperry Univac used to be a large computer manufacturer. And then eventually he landed at Control Data Corporation, CDC, who had at that time the most powerful computer, the C6600. In 1972, Seymour founded Cray Research and developed Cray 1, which was the supercomputer in 1976, and it really became the icon of the supercomputer age. I find it interesting that Tesla is following in those footsteps by creating this Dojo computer, realizing that the current computer hardware and technology is insufficient for the type of work that they're going to be, or development work they're going to be doing as they move into more artificial intelligence. And it's going to be interesting to see what kind of things they come up with this Dojo computer, because the Cray experience really did create a whole bunch of new discoveries. Now, Rajiv Kurian, who's the principal engineer at Tesla, who was involved in the AI presentation, at one point gave an example. And if you can understand this, more power to you. He said, "We expect most models to work out of the box. As an example, we took the recently released Stable Diffusion model and got it running on Dojo in minutes. out of the box. The compiler was able to map in a model in a parallel manner in a 25 Dojo dies. All right, so this is techno speak, and just keep doing the work you guys are doing on this AI project, because we're all looking forward to humanoid robots and the continued development of what you guys are putting in the cars at Tesla. Speaking of that, there is some really cool stuff that is emerging in the cars. And one of those is a park seek mode, which is now in validation testing. Now, I kid you not, when you pull into a busy parking lot and you really don't want to spend time looking for a parking spot, what you can do once this beta version is functional in a Tesla, you can get out of the car and it will go and find a parking spot and park itself. And when you're ready to leave, you'll be able to summon your car. It will pull up to wherever you just got out of the restaurant or the building and pick you up. Wouldn't that be great when it's raining cats and dogs? So anyway, this is part of what Tesla is doing with this AI technology and the development of full self-driving, which now, I'm fascinated, is beginning to be merged with what they're doing with robots, because if you think about it, it's basically the same need. You've got a mechanical device that needs to move through space and time. All right, we have a TikTok question. What are your best practices for a battery storage in a pack that is damaged? Any hazards? I'm assuming we're talking about a EV battery that has been removed from the car. Well, you definitely don't want to overcharge it. Our first fire that we had was a result of a Tesla Roadster battery that was being overcharged. It was 6,831 lithium-ion cells that eventually ignited because we were charging them too aggressively. Since then, of course, our protocols and our procedures have evolved tremendously. As far as storage, though, there's nothing wrong with just simply letting the pack sit. Don't charge. Keep it out of harm's way, inclement weather. Keep it indoors. And what you'll find is that if it's a Tesla Model S battery, for example, or a Tesla Model X battery, it does not do what a Tesla Roadster battery will do, which is deteriorate and get bricked. These other batteries, or these other later Tesla vehicle batteries, are quite content just simply sitting there waiting for you to reuse them. I have a question from TikTok. Vegas Adventures. Where do EV batteries go when they die? Do they go into landfills? Well, they used to, not EV batteries, but batteries did used to go into landfills when we got started in the 1980s. In the critical power world, it was not uncommon to have lead-acid batteries end up in landfills. And there, of course, you have lead and you've got acid, which are, they really wreak havoc with the water supplies and water tables. Since then, of course, people have become far more responsible. Companies have become far more responsible in their recycling. There's some cool companies emerging. We talk about Redwood Materials all the time. J.B. Strobel's company up in Colorado does a great job of recycling lithium-ion cells and batteries from many different types of devices. And the cool part is they are recycled and then oftentimes resold back to the same people that created the scrap in the first place, creating more EV vehicles. It looks like they have become far more responsible, and there are many other companies like Redwood Materials that are emerging. We have an Instagram visitor, Anwar. Good morning, Mr. Gruber from Kuwait. Welcome. A TikTok question from Jumartin. Where do you see the market going in terms of EVs for highway trucking? Well, it is definitely coming. Tesla has, of course, a semi-truck that will be on the road soon. We just don't know precisely when. But transportation is going to turn upside down when it comes to long-distance transport. And with full self-driving capability, we can't rule out the fact that these long-distance semis at some point will be driverless and actually able to go from point A to point B without too much human involvement. We have a question at the top there. There we go. We have a question about the Cybertruck. I think we've already answered that. Okay, so let's keep going. TikTok. Thank you for answering my question about the storage of EV batteries. You're more than welcome. Okay. Dojo question. Will Dojo interface with options or with Optimus so it can make my bed? Well, clean your house, make your bed. You know, good questions, because the types of things that we don't like to do is probably the first thing that we're going to task these humanoid robots with. And yes, it will be able to make your bed and get your mom off your back. We have a YouTube visitor from Saskatoon, Canada. Welcome, Darren N. Okay, do we have any other questions? I've got a bunch of streaming things here on these cell phones. Again, for those of you that missed the session about the picture behind me, this was a picture taken in Sedona. In the state of Arizona, everybody thinks the Grand Canyon is the place to go visit, when in truth, it's Sedona. Sedona is a very special place full of red rocks and the types of scenery that you see behind me here. It is they have an airport there on top of a mesa. And it's kind of spooky when you take off, because when you reach the end of the runway on this mesa, it suddenly drops off into the valley in Sedona. And hopefully you have enough airspeed to support the airplane, but it is, it's kind of disconcerting when you finally get to the end of the runway and you find out that the bottom or the floor has just dropped hundreds of feet. But highly recommend Sedona for any of you interested in visiting Arizona. For those of you that want to see the picture that are on the other platforms, YouTube is the only one that's actually streaming our green screen image. So feel free to go to YouTube. It's Gruber Motors, and you'll see about 150 other videos that we have posted out there that may be of interest to you. We have a TikTok question from ATR4. Hi, any news on graphene as a viable battery alternative? And this is from Canada. Months ago, earlier this year actually, we were invited to participate in a graphene project to insert graphene pouch batteries in a Model S to test the viability of using graphene technology in a Model S. We eventually ran into some engineering problems in that fundamentally the pouch batteries would not fit into the space that it was designed to go into. So rather than take that Model S, rip out the back seats, put a large monolith square battery in the back seat, we opted to wait until we had a more elegant solution. So at this point, we are not doing anything with graphene, although the same company that reached out to us earlier this year may have a different solution, and we're beginning dialogue again. The bottom line is that with this graphene solution, it was far less far more resistant to any sort of fire problems. It had a faster charge rate, and it had a longer distance for the given amount of weight and size, so more energy packed into this graphene technology. For any of you really technical, I would encourage you to investigate graphene, the whole graphene physics behind it. It is a fascinating technology, and it looks like that is where the future is going to go regarding batteries. From Instagram, we have a question from Wemik47. Can I get a job? Yes, we are interviewing every week. We have positions for mechanics and technicians. We don't know what to call them anymore these days, because anybody that works on vehicles like we do has to have 3 skills: software, electronics, and wrenching skills. And traditional mechanics that show up generally have only one of those skills. The guys that show up with the other 2 skills, typically don't want to get out on the shop floor and get underneath a car and work on something. So it is a unique skill set that we're looking for, 3-in-1 basically. And if you're interested, send us your resume to ev@gruber.com. That's ev@gruber.com. Question from TikTok from Andy. Can you record these live podcasts and post to YouTube? We actually do. That's another good reason to go to Gruber Motors on YouTube. Every one of these podcasts is broadcast and remains out there for you to view later on. Question from YouTube. Legarcia01. Come on, are you guys thinking up these tough names to see if I can pronounce them? Lee Garcia, okay. Do you think we are close to making EV batteries modular so they could easily be replaced like they are on RC cars? Have a strong opinion on that, having been in the critical power world for almost 40 years. With UPSs in data centers, uninterruptible power systems, in the late 90s, they began making them scalable. Cool concept. A customer could basically buy a 50 kVA UPS if they knew they were going to grow, with a scalability option in that UPS to go to 250 or even 500 kVA. So they simply added power modules as they grew. They didn't have to redo their electrical installation. They didn't have to buy new equipment and start all over. The advantages were, it was even hot swappable. You could plug things in while the UPS was running in case you dropped a power module or you had a battery problem. We're looking forward to the day that EV manufacturers do the same thing with electric vehicles. A modular battery design, for example, would allow a owner to select the amount of runtime that they want or the amount of mileage they want with that car. You may not want to go 400 or 500 miles in a Tesla Roadster. It's a two-seater, it's uncomfortable, and you can't take any luggage. So 150 miles would be plenty. Now you've shaved 700-800 pounds off that car. And guess what happens when you do that to a 3,000-pound car? Your performance increases dramatically. Also budgets. Maybe they don't have a budget for that $30,000 replacement Tesla Roadster battery pack. With scalable options, you have a reduction in price based on how much battery you're willing to buy or can afford to buy. Jason from Canada on TikTok. Thank you, brother. As a member of the fire service, great information. Welcome to our podcast. By the way, with 2 fires under our belt, we have an enormous respect for the firefighters that came out to fight both of those fires. And in each case, we realized that the amount of information available to firefighters, how to extinguish lithium-ion battery pack fires was still wanting, and we were instrumental in getting Tesla involved in working with our firefighters here locally and nationwide to help them become more prepared on how to handle vehicle fires and facility fires that involve lithium-ion batteries. There's some serious safety issues involved, and it's worth taking care of our first responders. TikTok, he says, oh, the name is Shh, I'm asleep. Sorry to ask you again, what skills are you looking for? Would you mind repeating? In an employee, I'm assuming. Ideally, we want Superman. We want somebody that has Linux software and CAN signals or CAN bus skills, electronics experience, component level troubleshooting, ability to use test equipment, troubleshoot down to component level, create schematics, create test procedures, and finally wrenching, strong wrenching background, not just brakes and low-tech auto, but the other parts, suspension, for example, in these EVs. So that would be the ideal candidate, but we know we're not going to get that. So we're willing to hire portions of it. Have a question from TikTok, Andy Gruber. How can I obtain the software and electronic skills to qualify to work at your facility? Well, if you've worked in adjacent industries, such as electronics, repairing electronics of some type, that's a real good place to start. If you're a software developer working with Linux, that's also a great place to start. And of course, we're not discounting the 780,000 mechanics in the United States that all need to pivot and transition to something else in order to remain relevant and basically employed. The advice for you guys would be pay attention to if your dealership or the company you work for is getting involved in EVs. Volunteer, study and go join forums, study all you can at home, educate yourself. At this point, there aren't too many private learning institutions that are available to teach EV technology and EV repair. That will change, but in the meantime, it's going to be up to you to do the research, become involved, and the company that you work for may eventually start moving you into that. Instagram, DJ VIP, Uncle Grube, hello. Well, hello.
Okay.
All right, do we have any final questions?
No, that's it. We can wrap up. We're at 56 minutes.
We're 56 minutes. All right. Again, thank you for joining us. These podcasts are aired every Tuesday morning at 8:30 and Thursday morning at 8:30. In between the podcasts, we like to post videos on Gruber Motors on Instagram. And make sure that you watch those because, again, those are going to be informative as well. For those of you that ask questions, how do I get involved in EV repair? Our videos are a wealth of information regarding how we repair things. Again, thank you for joining us. I'm Pete Gruber. We'll have a co-host within 2 weeks, but in the meantime, I have a silent co-host sitting next to me here. And for those of you wanting to see who that is or was, go to YouTube and you'll see my friend Bob, who's sitting here joining me for the session this morning. Thank you.